Hey guys, welcome back to another Flesh and Blood video. Today, I have the man, the myth, the legend. He's my friend, he runs his own card shop, and now he's a battle-hardened top 8 competitor. Please welcome Silas to the show. He's going to be giving us a little bit of info about the deck that he played in Cincinnati this weekend. How are you, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. It feels weird being on the receiving end of one of these after watching so many.
I was like, man, this is your moment, man. I'm sure it's the first of many, but I'm excited to get into the deck and kind of have you talk about it a little bit. Before we actually get into the deck and we talk about some of your card selection, walk me through your weekend. What were your matchups like? Were there any thoughts you had over the weekend that you'd like to give to other Fai players or just people in general?
Yeah. So I have my matchups here. Round one, I played against a Max, and I won that one. So I went, I think, 6-2 on the day, and then I lost in top 8. But the first round was against Max, and I think as a 5 player, you can just outrace him. Now, our list, I ran Kodachi's in 90% of the matchups.
Mm-hmm.
As we talked about as a team and other people, like Kodachi's as a whole, it wasn't what we expected after the weekend, and we can go into that more later. But
sure.
Round two, I played against a Viscerai, and all I have to say is Warmongers ruins them, and then I played an Arachne in round 3, and
okay.
I wasn't super familiar with that matchup, but I almost fatigued him, and that was really interesting to be on the other end of that. Then I played into a Bolton, and that one's a lot closer. Most people, I didn't see any Bolton play combo against an aggro deck. I know Boltons did very well at the Battle Hardened PTI, but it's very close, that matchup. It's not as you just run them over,
sure,
as it used to be.
Yeah.
Azalea in the 5th round. Let's see, 5th round Azalea.
Yep.
That's tough. Warmongers. I got to play 2 Warmongers against the Azalea. And then just had the D-reacts when I needed them, and that makes a big difference.
Okay. Was round 5 where you picked up your first loss, or are we still 5-0 at this point?
I was 5-0.
Okay.
Going into round 6, and I played against a Dash. I played against him in the PTI, and he also made top 8 in the Battle Hard. My record against Dash was 0-3 over the whole weekend.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They just put so much pressure out, even running Mask and Kodachis. They're 3-card hands with Twin Drive. They can still max V me, and I can't keep up.
Right.
That game, he started Pounder, which was interesting. Most start Chamber.
Yep.
But he did Pounder, and it was 1-1 at the end, but he just had too much damage. I didn't play on Art of War that game.
Okay, so he was just on a straight racing plan.
Yeah, he was just go, go, go.
Okay.
So I got my first loss. So I was 5-1, which one of the best records I've ever had.
Sure.
And then 6th round played Dromai. I won that one. I was able to apply a lot of pressure, and I actually played my CNCs because he wasn't developing a board state, and I didn't want to hold a card in hand. I'd rather play my hand out, and I got to blow up his Tumble Tide because he got stuck with 2 tomes in hand.
Oh, wow.
And he couldn't do anything.
What a blowout of a play.
Yeah, once I saw him flip Tumble Tie, I was like, oh gosh, dude. 3rd round was, the 7th round.
This is round 8.
Round 8.
5-0, losing to 5-1, and now we're 6-1 at this point. So last round of the day before our cut here.
Last round, it didn't. We just found out before it started. It didn't matter. It was just for seeding that the top 8 was locked, which was a nice feeling because you don't have the pressure.
Sure.
I played against Levia. I went 2nd. That's fine. I think that's pretty good. No, I went 2nd. He went 1st.
Okay.
And he turned 0, tear limb from limb, swing big for 16.
Wow.
And then the 2nd turn of his, he played a Dread Screamer, then a Deadwood Rumble, banishing my Phoenix Flame.
Oh, wow.
Then the 3rd turn, he played another tear limb from limb, and then attack for 15. And I was like,
man.
My life is like 40, 30, 20, 13, 0. Like, it just is dumpster.
So, sounds like you got dumpstered by Levia a little bit there. And it also sounds like Dash gave you a hard time in round 6. So,
yes.
Do you think any of those do you think those games are played bigger in part to the idea of maybe that you got high rolled a little bit? Because I'm not saying that anybody did, but I mean, it sounds like the Levia player was definitely on the upper end of their draws there. And then, if the Dash is able to get off a couple of max Vs, I would call that in the upper half of their draws. Do you feel like maybe some of that's more high rolly, or do you feel like maybe that's just like something with the deck that could have been fixed that we could have done differently this past weekend?
The Levia one, I think, was more of a high roll. I mean, you don't have 3 back-to-back turns like that
Okay.
very often as Herc, and I've played a lot of her, so it doesn't happen too often. The Dash one, I just think Dash works so well off 3-card hands as OG Dash.
Yep.
That I just, with the Kodachis, can't keep up the pressure.
Sure. Absolutely. No, that makes sense.
So I think the Dash is more of a deck building issue for us. More than the Levia. I think that one she just ran me over.
Okay, gotcha. Well, dude, thanks for walking me through your weekend. I appreciate that. Give the viewers at home a little bit insight about how your weekend went. Let's go ahead and hop over and take a look at the deck. Okay, so Silas, taking a look at your deck list here, let's just start at the top here. Let's talk about your weapon choices, your equipment. And then we'll jump into the sideboard and talk about some sideboarded equipment. Just kind of walk me through your choices and what you were thinking, why these cards were going to be good for Cincinnati.
Well, a lot of it goes to you, Zach. I mean, you worked really hard on the deck, and as a team, we had some input, but I know you were the one grinding the game. So,
it's your deck building skills. But dude, you piloted the deck, man, and that's what matters. That's get the results right there.
So this was our main package for equipment and weapons into 90% of the field.
Mm-hmm.
The Flame Scale Furnace, the block 3, so good. I never really activated its ability. I don't know if that's just because I'm not used to that play pattern, or that just didn't come up.
I mean, I think that, it's mostly there for the block 3. Most hands where you'd activate Furnace, you're better off just blocking 6. And just keeping a couple of cards. So I was like, that it makes sense. It doesn't come up very regularly in my experience.
Momentum, such a good card.
It's one of the best.
Itself. Yeah. Tiger Strike. It's nice for the 2 block. On our list, we didn't get to trigger it a lot. And that's one thing I was kind of down on.
Sure.
Is that our deck wasn't set up to really get that extra point of value each turn.
Yep. I felt that too this weekend.
So that was the main board, and Snaps, of course, is the best feat Ninja has.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then for the sideboard, links we have links in the Spellfray Cloak, Spellfray Equipment, Tide Flippers. That was pretty much all those 4 pieces for Kano.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot. Just trying to race him.
So we had Mask of the Pouncing links and some Kano sideboard equipment here. And I know that going into the weekend, our original plan, we didn't really have any other matchups that we wanted Mask of the Pouncing links into. Moving forward, if you were going to be playing this list, are there matchups that you would change playing Pouncing links in over playing Momentum in?
Yeah, I think Dash would be one. Any aggro mirror, especially if I'm going second.
Okay.
Bolton. I just wanted to see. I know that's one thing we're really looking into is, can we just push it over?
Mm-hmm.
Because the momentum is nice, but Bolton works well off 3 cards. Brute works well off 3 cards. So they don't care to block the 1 card. And most of my games weren't grind matches. So the overall value of momentum turn after turn just didn't add up.
Okay, that's fair. And pretty historically in Fai, people pair Emberblade and Pouncing Links together. Those are generally just cards that you see put together. And while we had Emberblade in our list, what matchups did you run Emberblade in this past weekend?
Azalea and the Assassins. And I didn't play a Riptide, but it would have been Riptide if I'd have saw him. Just because that Codex Frailty with Kodachis just cripples your turn. That's a minimum 2 points that you're losing. Plus, if you can't trigger your mask, so you lose points there. So it worked out really well because you can still come in for 2, and that's only 1 point of value loss versus 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was like, still having an active weapon through a frailty token is pretty important in the deck. Considering that you were only playing Emberblade against decks that could give you a frailty is what it sounds like. Are there after the weekend, are there any other matchups that you think Emberblade might be better in with this style deck? Or do you think that maybe if you're going to run Emberblade more consistently, it takes an entire deck change?
I think it's a deck change. I
Okay.
don't think we had enough starters in our deck, Draconic starters in particular, to allow for Emberblade to be consistent.
Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. So we've talked about the equipment. Let's talk about, like you've got 12 sideboard cards here. Let's start with Command and Conquer over here on the left and just kind of walk me through why you chose some of the cards that you chose and what matchups you like them in.
Yeah, CNC, it's good in almost any matchup, but particularly in Ranger and Dromai because it's a popper. But just playing it forces 2 cards out of Azalea, and it will kind of buy you a turn, allow you to get back in the game. Now, if you don't draw those, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it a lot tougher.
Sure, absolutely.
The Reinforce and Sinks, I think Reinforce, even though it cost me my top 8, I would still call that card an all-star because it just allows you to play around Dominate. It lets you block Red in the Ledger. I mean, I think I blocked an 11-point Red in the Ledger with a Sink, Reinforce, and a block.
Yeah.
Or not but it wasn't dominated, but still 3 cards and you just shut their turn down.
Sure, absolutely. No, there's a lot of value in that. And, for everybody who wasn't there or hasn't heard about it, in the top 8 of Battle Hardened Cincinnati, Silas played against Lucas Oswald in the first round of top 8, who was playing Bravo. And during his game, Silas blocked with a Warmonger's Diplomacy and then tried to reinforce the line, which this is target defending attack action cards only. So I think just kind of tired at the end of the day between that and, Silas maybe being a little under the weather. I think it just kind of paired into a little bit of a lapse in judgment there. Silas still pulled it together though, played very well and, really tried to pull the game back there. So it's not easy to get back into that headspace. And I've watched a lot of people fall out of that headspace. So I tip my hat to Silas for being able to get back into that state of mind after a mistake like that against somebody who's as good as Lucas. So,
dude, it was a blowout. I mean, it wasn't a blowout. I got him down to 1, so I feel like I should have won that match.
Sure,
but you live and learn.
No, absolutely. So the last card we got in the sideboard here is That All You Got?
Yeah, that was an interesting card, and I have mixed feelings on it.
Okay,
it was really good against Arachne because I just had it every time he played a dagger. The 3 times he swung his dagger,
okay,
I played it. It kind of tilted him a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure.
And we used it as like the Fai mirror to try to give us the extra value. I don't think that's enough cases to warrant it.
Okay.
I know we talked about making some changes with that card for a blue 3 block.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll test that out and see. It's just the yellow wasn't what you needed most of the time.
Okay, so sounds like looking at That All You Got in your sideboard, that might be like the big card you would look to change going forward.
That'd be the first card I would change.
Do you think you would cut all 3 copies, or do you think maybe you would trim some copies and try a different card? Maybe like an Ancestral Empowerment or something like that? Or
I'd cut all 3.
Okay, gotcha. Interesting. Okay, so we've looked at the sideboard and we've talked about the equipment and the weapon choices here a little bit. So let's go back up here to the top of our deck list. And let's just kind of start over here in the top left. We'll start with Bittering Thorns, and let's just work through the deck list and kind of tell me about, cards, whether you liked them or disliked them, and, how you feel about them moving forward.
Bittering Thorns is a good card. It's a 1 for 4. On hit makes it a 1 for 5, which is above rate.
Mm-hmm.
Most people can block it with a card and equipment, so it didn't really ever get trigger that 1 for 5.
Sure.
But it did get some equipment. So it's a good card. They just need to reprint it because it's too expensive.
It is crazy. It's like $8 a card or something outrageous. So
Blaze Headlong, 0 for 4. It's a staple.
I was like, Blaze Headlong is a staple in every Fai deck I've ever seen, except for the Fai T deck. So I mean, I was like, Blaze is. I can't imagine there's a Fai deck that doesn't have Blaze Headlong in it.
Yeah, it's so good. Brand is a great starter, 0 for 3. It really works with Kodachis because it makes your next one Draconic.
Sure.
It's a great card. Didn't really play the blue, but the red's pretty solid.
Okay.
Censor I'm very torn on Censor after thinking about it over the weekend.
Okay.
If you have to block with 2 cards, it's a great 1-card 5 and usually forces cards out of their hand.
Sure.
However, it made for some really awkward hands where you would draw all chain enders or no draconic starters or
Okay.
no blue. And you just had all reds. And
So kind of
it
like
was hard.
forcing your hand in a way,
Yeah.
like you're like, okay, like this hand has to block with some amount of cards here because there's only so much I can do if I keep my whole hand here, something like that,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. Like I had a lot of hands that were like Bittering Thorns, Censor, Lava Burst, Mounting Anger, or Snatch or something. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right. Yeah. I was like, those all red hands. I was like, I also felt the clunkiness of the deck over the weekend. And I think that's something we can definitely work on moving forward here.
Yeah. Double Strike is great, especially on Art of Wars. I mean, it's
yeah,
really good.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's as good in an Emberblade list, just because you can't really make it draconic. And I feel like if you're Emberblade, you want those draconic starters.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
so I'll probably look at cutting that one. The Bittering Thorns I'll probably cut as well, unfortunately.
So are you talking about cutting those cards like if you move more towards a Emberblade dedicated list? Okay. That makes sense.
E-Strike, it's just a solid 2-card hand, 2 for 7. Or you can draw a card in Arsenal. I mean, it's just a great card.
Yep, E-Strike has a lot of utility.
Lava Burst, 0 for 6 most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Especially if you can Lava Burst, snap. If you're playing Links, you can Links into Assault the Wound, play a Lava Burst, and come in for Assault the Wound for like 8 points of damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Lava Burst
impossible.
is probably one of the best chain enders in the Fai card pool that we have access to.
The fact that it's a 3 block and a 0 cost is crazy.
It's actually insane, 100%.
Mounting Anger, I really like that card. It's a starter.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 for 4. Sometimes turns a Snatch into, like if you have a Snatch or an E-Strike, you can make that extra +1. That really makes a difference.
Okay.
And if you manage to play it on Chain Link 3, somehow if your hands work out like that, if you put a CNC, banish that, you're looking really good coming in with that.
Sure, absolutely. I was like, I feel like Mounting Anger is it being the dual threat of being a turn starter and also being a break point for Mask of Momentum, really was one of the standout factors here.
It was so good.
So this is kind of like almost laughable because every Fai deck plays Phoenix Flame in some variety because it's a free card basically off of Fai's text every turn. But talk me through like why you're only on 1 as opposed to like 2 or 3 and maybe some Flame Call Awakenings.
Well, I think where we were trying to really go for the wide plan with the Kodachis and triggering Mask twice, you only need the 1 because you need cards like the Double Strike and the Bittering Thorns to really spread the combat chain out.
Okay.
If you're running 2 of them, you need the Uprisings or Awakenings.
Okay, so not really enough draconic chain links to like really warrant being able to like abuse Fai every single turn to make it worth it.
Yeah, and that's something I noticed is I didn't get to trigger Fai every turn, and I feel like that's a wasted point of 1, maybe 2 points of value per turn off Shuko that you could get.
Absolutely, 100%.
Rabble, it was mostly a 0 for 4, so I can't complain about it.
I mean, you like 0 for 4s we go again. It's a good way to push masks. It's also a good way to start the turn if you need to.
Yeah, it's way better than Talishard's 0 for 2s most of the time.
Absolutely. I think we've all fell victim to that.
Rising Resentment, just a draconic starter. It's just a solid 0 for 3.
So looking at Rising Resentment, were there ever turns, and I ask because I haven't seen this come up that often, but were there ever turns when the text on Rising Resentment played a part in like you being able to play a Mounting Anger or a Censor for free in any games?
Not in this list. There's just not enough draconic attacks to allow you to play that. Anything but usually the first chain link.
Okay, gotcha.
Same thing with Ronin. It's a 0 for 3.
I mean, it's literally a draconic head jab. It's like his only line of text.
It's great. Snatch, Red Snatch, a classic. Chain Injure, forces blocks.
Yep, absolutely. I was
Most
like,
people never let me draw it though.
well, I was like in the aggro mirror, it gives you a good opportunity to like try and like force cards out of your opponent's hand or put you in the driver's seat for the game.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, and this is something that like I've seen people do and I've been experimenting with a little bit myself. Were there ever turns when you had like maybe an Art of War, and you knew you were going to play it, so you led with the Snatch, knowing that you have Snapdragons up, so that you could try to use the Art of War as a reaction to try and get your opponent?
I didn't have that come up very often
Okay,
where I had the two cards together.
sure,
Now I think you can do that. However, most good players I noticed were really good at blocking, especially in the later in the day near the upper tables. They're
right.
all so aware of everything you're trying to do. And I think they would just overblock it.
No, that's fair. I mean, especially like if you like, like in your round against Dash, like if you lead on a Snatch and have Snapdragon Scalers and you took some damage to keep all of your cards, and they're probably pretty aware the big hand is coming. So they're probably pretty likely to block with a card and, a Tekla Foundry Heart to cover 5 so they can play around it. So, okay. And then, I mean, does this card need any introduction?
No, it's so busted in Fai.
Absolutely. Okay.
Salt the Wound. I like that we did 2 copies
Mm-hmm.
because if you happen to block with one and you want that chain in there sometime at the end, or if you're running links, you really want 2 of them, I feel like, because it'll always let you have the option of getting that other one if you've already used one.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it has the versatility of being a chain ender. It turns on Kodachis with Go Again, and it also blocks for 3. So there's really not much of a reason not to play some number of this card in every file list, I feel like.
I think 1 or 2 is what people debate on, but I like the 2.
Okay.
Lava Veins, it's a 3 block. It's a blue 0 cost 3 block, which happens to be Draconic, which is nice.
It is convenient because you can get like this card can be played in the middle of a chain if you need it to be. So I was like, but the 3 block is, I mean, at least in my opinion, that was the biggest line of text. It turns on Kodachis and it blocks for 3.
Yep. Just another Kodachi 3 block. I think though, something I've been thinking about, if you're running an Emberblade list and you don't have Kodachis at all, that should probably be a flying kick.
Okay.
Because I had multiple hands, especially in the end game, where you have 3 blues and maybe 1 red or a yellow.
Sure.
So having that flying kick, I think, could really put a lot of pressure on people.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that giving up the points that this card gives you into Dromai is worth playing a flying kick for other matchups?
I think so, because it's very rare I ever played Soulbead Strike, even in Dromai.
Okay, fair enough.
Stab Wound, it's a blue 0/3 block that happens to be a chain ender if you need it with Kodachis.
Sure.
So it can turn into a 0/4. I don't think you use it if you are running Emberblade. I think you cut all 3 of them.
No, that's fair. You can look at other cards, probably like This Round's on Me, or maybe some other like tech for the mirror. I do have to say that this card was pretty fun to like throw at the end of the chain, like if you could trigger Shuko with it, because it was a 3 damage card that said on hit lose 2 life, which is not nothing. A blue 0 for 5 is pretty solid. That's a really good card. So. And then we talked a little bit about, you mentioned your Viserai game, and we also talked about your Bravo game. Hey, do you feel like Warmonger's Diplomacy, which is like quote unquote a brick on your Art of War turns and other things, do you feel like this card was worth its weight over the weekend?
Oh, 100%. Especially in my Viserai matchup.
Okay.
He took like 15, 16 damage, and then I played Warmongers at the end and stared at him, and he just sighed and said, "I really hate that card." And then he passed back to me, so I had the game after that.
Oh, dude, feels bad for him, but man, that's amazing for you. Take all that damage to probably keep a Revel hand, and then you just play Warmongers. And
yeah, it worked out great. And Azalea, it's so good. Even if they're smart and they always arsenal some type of an attack, the Azalea I played both times, he had a Rabble in arsenal, and then he went and played an Arrow after that.
Okay.
But at least he didn't get to pump it or dominate, so it worked out still.
Okay. So we've talked about the deck a little bit, and again, congrats on top 8, man. First one on the team to top 8 a Battle Hardened. We're all really excited for you. It's a very good accomplishment. Looking at the list here, you know, you talked about some cards that were clunky that you might change, that you felt like maybe there were too many chain enders at certain times. When you're looking at the overall list, you had mentioned early on that Kodachi's felt pretty lackluster. Do you think that moving forward, you're looking at maybe a more Emberblade focused list with Kodachi's in the side? Or do you think maybe you're looking at just Emberblade moving forward?
I think just Emberblade. I think at the top table, well, not even at the top tables, but at these bigger competitions, people know how to block Kodachi's.
Right.
They know what you're going to do. They know you're going to come in on that third chain link for a 4, so they always block the second Kodachi.
Sure.
Now, a lot of people have good equipment, so they just throw a equipment in it, and it's no big deal. So I feel like I got punished for sometimes having Kodachi's over Emberblade.
Sure, no, and that makes sense. Kodachi's are definitely like a style of play that looks to punish people in certain spots and like really, you know, force cards from their hands. But if people are smart and good players, they can really play around it. And Emberblade's always just more points, so that actually makes a lot of sense. All right, guys, you heard it here first. You got every thought from Silas from this past weekend to how he wants to move forward and everything in between. Silas, thanks so much for being on, man. I appreciate you stopping by. I know you've been feeling a little under the weather this past few days, but I appreciate you making time, man. It means a lot.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me. And thanks for working so hard on the deck. Hopefully we can repeat.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Looking for repeats in Hartford for sure. Guys, if you want to play Silas's deck moving forward, be sure to check out the link in the description below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take it easy, guys.